Welcome to Becoming Virtuosa, the podcast with Dr. Susan Crockett. You are listening to episode number 26, How to Feel Better, an interview with fellow certified life coach Donna Oborne. This episode is dedicated to Donna's grandson, Kareem Antoine Oborne, who passed away April 1st.
Welcome to Becoming Virtuosa, where women learn to love their lives. Do you find yourself frustrated by society's expectations? Looking for practical advice on how to discover your talents and level up your life? You found the right place. Here's your host, U.S. News top doctor, robotic surgeon, and certified life coach, Dr. Susan Crockett.
Hello, my virtuosas and my VITs, my virtuosas in training. How are y'all doing today? I am your host, Dr. Susan Crockett. As always, you can call me Sue because I'm not actually doctoring today. We are doing a little bit of talking, and I'm talking with Donna today about how to feel better. How to feel better. This is ironic because I've been feeling not so great this week, and I don't know about you guys, but this is kind of a tough time for us to be going through in the world, and there's a lot of not feeling good. And I think that's the opposite of how we are supposed to go through life, even when bad stuff is happening. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to feel better today. And I know you're going to enjoy it. I had intended on doing, I think I told y'all last week, I was going to do a teaching on healing all of the isms, racism, etc. And I had an episode happen this week. I'll call it an episode. I had an interaction this week. I thought I had dealt with all of this in my own life. And personally, I have not been on the receiving end of racism that much, but I have sexism and paternalism. And I thought I had worked through this and was emotionally sound about it. And then something happened this week. I got faced with a circumstance that's supposed to be neutral, right? And y'all, I lost my ever living you know what. It was awful. It was ugly. It was ugly. And in my mind, I've been working on this lecture for you guys about isms. And so it made it worse because then I started hating on myself for how bad I was not handling this and how I thought I should be able to handle it. And anytime we get to saying should, that causes a little bit of suffering. Anyway, so I am not ready to do that talk yet. So I've moved up Donna's talk about how to feel better. I know you're going to love listening to her this week. So without further ado, here's Donna. All right, Donna. Hey, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great. Thanks, Sue. And you?
So great to have you here to talk with us. Oh, I'm great. It's a beautiful day here in Texas. Where are you?
I'm in Bella Coola, BC, Canada.
Wow. Is it cooler than 105 degrees up there?
Oh my gracious, girl. We've had nothing but rain and yeah. I live in quite a remote community. The population is about 2,000 people.
Yeah.
It's half First Nations.
Wow.
We call it First Nations. I think you call them Indians or natives, and half non. And
wow.
And we're like a 5-hour drive to the next larger community.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, awesome. Well, welcome to the podcast. I can't wait to see what you have to share with our listeners. What a unique perspective. How about if we start with you telling us your story? How did you get into coaching? And we're going to talk about how to feel better today. How did you choose that topic as something that you like to work with people on?
I was pretty much a stay-at-home mom, and I did work outside of the home, but only as it would allow me to be that primary caretaker of our children. So was a substitute teacher and fished with my husband, etc. So in 2008, my children and grandchildren all seemed to be settled and weren't in needs of my hands-on support. And I found myself without purpose. And I just really wanted to feel better. And I thought it was because I lived in a really remote community and it was boring here. And I thought it was because
Ah,
my husband didn't want to move and that we really should move because I was bored. And I started looking for some help. I just wanted to feel better. I just felt lost. And I found Brooke Castillo. And the first podcast I listened to was How to Feel Better. And it just made so much sense that I joined Self Coaching Scholars. And soon after that, she had offered the coach training online, the first one. And I thought,
right, right.
I totally have to do this. And it just
Ah,
so,
so you were in the first online group.
yeah, I was. Were you?
No, I certified at the end of last year, like the end of September.
Okay. Yeah. So October
Yep.
2018, we started our training.
Sweet. So today we're going to talk about how to feel better.
Oh, yeah.
This is the topic that actually brought you to coaching. So, what are you going to teach our listeners today about how to feel better?
You know, when you ask anyone, what do you really want? Most people say, I just want to feel better of some sort. They might
I
say,
know, right?
yeah, like, I just want to feel peace. I just want to feel content. And the thing is that we think we'll feel better if we get those things outside of us. If I just do this, if I just get that, if I just go on a holiday, then I'll feel better. But
Or
we
if I
know
just get my husband to move because I'm bored.
exactly.
Yeah, right? Like you were thinking,
Yeah.
right? But we learn different when we learn coaching. What do we learn?
We learn that it's our thoughts that create our feelings. It's not the things outside
Right.
of us that create our feelings.
It's our thoughts that come from within us.
Yeah.
So
It's not,
powerful.
yeah, it is.
So you brought us a tool today to teach our listeners how to do this. I think this is something that, there's a lot of suffering that I see right now, not just in my practice, but with, the COVID pandemic and people being in lockdown and suffering about, lack of money or fear of being sick and losing people that they love. There's a lot of wanting to feel better right now because there's a lot of not feeling great right now. And I know my listeners have heard some of what we're talking about in prior episodes, but I think what you're bringing today is a really important, like, basic tool for helping people feel better no matter what their situation or their circumstances are. So, why don't you go ahead and tell me a little bit about the tool that we're going to talk about today?
Okay. So I thought it was really interesting to even answer the question, how can I feel better? And the answer
Right.
is to get better at feeling. So how can I
Oh,
feel
no.
better? Get better at feeling.
Oh,
And
even if I'm feeling terrible, Donna?
yes, and let me go a little further is how do you get better at feeling is to feel your feelings. And I
Right.
think it's
Okay. So,
really interesting, just a second, if you even think about it, is that feelings are for feeling.
right.
And when we ignore our feelings, when we try to resist or react or try to avoid them, then that's when we suffer. That's when we cause mental anguish, neurosis, and also physical. It affects our physical health in an adverse way because feelings are for feeling.
Wow. Well, yeah, but so many of us are running from them, especially those feelings we don't want to feel, right? We're thinking we shouldn't feel that or things should be different so we don't feel that.
Yeah.
So,
And
how do you
that's
practice
so,
feeling your feelings?
but before we even get there, it's really interesting to know that feelings are created, we create our own feelings by things that we think, by thoughts that we think. So we know that
Right.
when we think a thought, something happens in our brain, and then it creates a electrical and chemical reaction, which I don't fully understand, but I know it's electrical and chemical, that then we experience as a vibration in our body. So when we even just
Isn't
look
that
at it,
fascinating?
even if we just look at it biologically, we have a thought and think of our brain as a computer going tick, 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 putting things together. And then, that's what creates this vibration. We're going to feel it in the body. What's the big deal? Just feel the vibration.
Just let it feel. So what you're talking about is the tool that our listeners have heard before from me and some of our other podcast interviews, the CTFAR model. You've just outlined the TF part of it, but let's just go back and review for our listeners what that CTFAR model is.
Yeah, the C stands for the circumstance. And those are just the facts. Those are the things that we see outside, like the weather, where we live, what somebody says, our past. Those are the things that are it's just information. It's just
What
data.
somebody said, right?
Yes.
Okay. I'll take the next one. So T is thinking, right? Our thoughts, our brain is creating, and we have control and choice over our thoughts. We don't always have control. Sometimes they pop into my mind and I don't think I have control. But the fact is our thoughts are things that we have a choice to think or not. So that's the T.
Yeah. And isn't it interesting about the
How about
thought?
F?
Yeah. But even I just want to add to the thoughts, they all come, they're from the past. Yeah. Our thoughts are from the past. And we actually are choosing them, but we're choosing them unconsciously. And that's what this work does, is it creates awareness. These are my stored thoughts. This is what I'm thinking. This is what I'm believing is true. And like you said, it's an option. It's a choice.
We think thoughts about the circumstances. That's the CT part. What's the F?
F, that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. And that's the vibration we experience in our body as a result of a thought that we think in our brain.
Creates our feelings.
Yeah. But a feeling starts in the brain and goes to the body, and which is different than a sensation, okay. Like the sensation of hunger. That would start of real right. hunger. That would start in the body and go to the brain. Or if you're cold, that starts in the body and goes to the brain. But a feeling starts in the brain and goes to the body. And we are choosing how we feel, and it's totally under our control. It's interesting.
It's just mind-blowing.
It is. And even if you just slow it all down and say, it's a learned behavior. It's a learned response.
Wow. And we can unlearn it if we've learned it.
Absolutely.
Cool. Okay. So that's CTF, circumstances, thoughts, feelings. Our feelings create the A. The A is our actions, right? So all of our actions come out of our feelings that are generated by our thoughts about the circumstances. And then what's the R? CTFAR.
The result is our experience of the circumstance. So, right. And we've created that result by the way that we choose to think, the way that we choose to feel, what we do or don't do. And then that's our experience. Maybe if we have a goal, something that we want to accomplish, that would be our result. It's things that we end up doing or don't do. It's who we are being in this little story that we've created.
Got it. Cool. Okay, CTFAR. We got the whole model there. So tell us how we use this to feel better. Tell us a little bit about how our listeners can use the model to feel better.
Okay. And one thing that I like to use is that along with the model is even using the serenity prayer of God grant me the serenity or the peace to accept the things I cannot change. That's our circumstance. And the courage to change the things that I can change. And what we can change is our TFAR. And to know that is, it says at the end of that, is to know the difference and the wisdom to know the difference. So when we use the model, and when we use the model, we separate, okay, what's out of my control, the circumstance. Then we get peace.
Yep.
And then it does take courage to pay attention to what we're thinking. It takes courage to feel our feelings. And I think that's really interesting because when you think of it, is that of emotions are just vibrations. And you can think of it, say, on a line. And on one end, we call them negative emotions. And on the other end, it's the positive emotions.
Right. We tend to label them that way.
Yes, but I think this is interesting, Sue, is that just because something is negative, it doesn't mean it's bad.
Like an example, give me an example there.
Okay, I like to think of it as cold water. Water is cold. It can be ice cold, and it can be hot or warm. That's just a fact. It's not good or bad. It just is. And I'm thinking of cold water as in jumping into a cold lake or a cold river.
That doesn't feel very good.
But that is just a thought because we've decided cold water is bad. I like warm water.
Right. Okay.
And it's the same thing with negative emotion. It's all
like sadness.
Or disappointment. It's just a vibration. And as long as we have this relationship with negative emotion, that it's bad, that it can hurt me, we are going to want to avoid it. We are going to resist it.
And the minute we just go, oh, it's just water. Oh, I can just sit here in it. It's okay. Then we get somewhere.
Yeah, then it's not a big deal. But it's because I think that intrinsically we do, when we feel a negative emotion, its purpose is to alert us to something to pay attention to. That's that part of our primitive brain, right? Danger, danger. Right? So now we don't have lions and bears. Well, we do have bears around here, but that are going to alert us to danger. It's more a thought like, oh no, what if I don't get it done? Or, some kind of thought. What if they don't like me? Whatever, that we are alarmed and we respond to. But we have a relationship. I think if we take time and look at, naturally, I'm going to react to negative emotion. But once we become aware of that, we can go, oh, that's a negative emotion. That's a vibration. I can just feel it.
So that's one of the benefits that you had talked about when we had been doing our discussion about this. You had said there's some benefits. And that's one of the things that you said is that it creates the awareness so that you can accept and allow, right?
Yes.
Can you go over the other benefits of learning this skill of processing our feelings and emotions like that? You listed a couple more, and I think they're important.
When we really feel our emotions, we get to know ourselves like in a deeper way. And but we always have to approach ourselves with kindness and interest.
Yep.
And when we just trust ourselves and don't push ourselves, but just create that awareness. Oh, this is what I'm feeling. This is the vibration of disappointment. This is what it feels like. And we just become the watcher. So let's even try the little exercise. And I'll ask you, Sue, and our listeners, is there something that you're worried about? Is there something that you're afraid of that's concerning? And then I
Yeah.
just want you to notice in your body, what does that vibration feel like?
Oh gosh. So for me, it's mostly in my gut. Like that saying that you feel something in your gut is like real for me. It's physical. It feels like
Mhm.
a hollow or heavy, dull, not painful, but just like almost nauseating kind of feeling in my middle of my stomach.
Yeah. And I just want you to, and sometimes it's helpful to close your eyes because I just want you to keep tapping into your body and just feel that emotion. And I want you to breathe, just breathe into it. And sometimes you can even think of just moving toward it and move into it and open up to it and keep describing it to yourself. What does this vibration feel like? Is it moving?
Yeah, it's kind of going up my throat,
Mm.
and it kind of feels like a little bit of tightening's not the right word, just it's moving up my throat like it's trying to get out my mouth
Yeah.
because it's leaving my stomach. Isn't
Yeah.
that weird? Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I want you to just soften your body and breathe into it. It's just a vibration.
It's gone. It's
Amazing.
already gone.
Amazing.
Wow. That was really cool, Donna.
Yeah.
That didn't even take long.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's so
That not being afraid of it, like I could sit and perseverate on that for hours and feel it for hours, and you just made me like just the paying attention to it and breathing into it. That was like a minute, not even. That was gone.
yeah.
That's so cool. Okay, so that's definitely one way to feel better. Do you have some other tips for our listeners about how to help ourselves feel better?
Well, even as sometimes, like for you, going back to where you were processing that emotion, because that's what you were doing rather than resisting or reacting to it, you were actually just opening up to it. And so, just that whole thing of opening up to it, walking into it. Another little thing that I like to do in processing the emotion is increase it, like increase the intensity of it intentionally
Wow.
because
Yeah.
then we're creating more authority over it. We're not in it. We're teaching our body and our brain that I'm creating this emotion with my thought. My thought is creating this emotion. And
Wow.
just one other
Wow.
little thing that I like to do when I'm actually feeling the emotion is, as you were doing, describe it and breathe into it and relax your body, is to even say, I'm creating this vibration with my mind. Isn't this
Say that
interesting?
again?
I'm creating this vibration with my mind. My thought
Ah,
is creating this emotion so that I'm teaching myself over and over again that I'm the one that's creating and choosing this emotion. Not a big deal. It's
yep.
just a vibration.
Having that awareness. That is awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today and teaching our listeners about this. If you were to wrap this up with like one primary nugget you want them to take away from this, what would you say that is? What's the takeaway, Donna?
Well, I think it is become your own best friend. Is
I
begin
love
to
that.
yeah, is begin to notice yourself and pay attention And our emotions are what's crying out to us for our attention. Our emotions are calling us home. And because,
Wow.
you know that saying, wherever we go, there we are?
We are. Yep. That
So,
one gets me every time.
yeah. And one little thing,
Awesome.
just one little thing to squeeze in here that I've just started doing is looking at myself in the mirror, disclosure, bare naked, and
Ah, TMI.
telling myself, I love you. You look good. And just
Aw,
talking to
those
myself,
are such kind words.
yeah. And even touch your
Sweet.
heart. Touch your heart and say, I love you. And that creates that
Aw,
connection.
to yourself and loving yourself.
Yeah.
Whew, very powerful. Awesome. Well, thanks, Donna. I'm going to let you do something that I don't usually have my guests do because I just think it's going to be fun. I am going to let you do the what we're listening to, what we're reading, and what we're watching segment. I'm going to flip it upside down, though. I want you to start by telling everybody what you watched this week. What's on your mind on Netflix this week?
Well, it's so interesting. Last night, my husband and I watched this movie on Netflix. It's called Nobody Knows I'm Here. And it's about a man who, when he was a youngster, he had a very good singing voice, but it was deemed that his body was not appropriate. And so what they did is they used his singing voice and they dubbed it onto an acceptable body. And this other
Wow.
person, this other person then became very famous. That just traumatized him. And so then he became a recluse. And it was as a result of this woman who accidentally found him and just was interested and kind and didn't force herself on him, was just interested in him. And he began to open up. And I think it began to experience some healing. And I think that that's so depicted just the friend that we can be to ourselves is just be kind.
Oh, wow.
And don't be in a hurry and notice and make that connection with yourself. Because the more connected
that's
you
so
are
sweet.
with yourself, the more we can connect with others and be who we're meant to be.
That's awesome. So that's called Nobody Knows I'm Here
Yes.
on Netflix. That's
Yes.
cool. And then for reading, I think you picked one of my favorites, which is Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert.
Yes.
I love that.
Yes.
Yep. And then tell us about what you're listening to as far as music. You have a special treat for our audience.
Well, it's kind of interesting. It was actually reading Elizabeth Gilbert, and she said, what do you love doing so much that the word failure and success essentially becomes irrelevant? What do you love even more than you love your own ego? And it was funny when I read that.
Oh.
It was funny when I read that. The first thing that came up was singing. Like, I just like singing. So, and what I've always done is when I'm trying to learn something new, then I'll put a melody to a concept so that I can learn it and meditate on it. So this is one that I created. Okay. Confidence.
Go for it.
Okay, and it's called Confidence. Confidence is knowing I'm great and not great. I'm strong and I'm weak. I'm giving and I'm selfish. I'm talented. I'm ignorant. I'm kind and I'm mean. I'm all these things and it's okay. I'm striving to become more loving, more patient, more gracious, more capable, but none of my shortcomings are reason not to be confident. I love
Yay!
all parts of me. I'm just a girl trying her best, and I choose to love me as I am. I am confidence is knowing I'm great and not great. And then it goes on and on. But I must tell
beautiful.
you, I took those words from Jody Moore. When I heard this,
who's one of our fellows. She's one of the master certified coaches from the Life Coach School. Yeah.
And I love this because it's such a balance. Oh yeah, get over it. We're not perfect, and that's what confidence is.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Donna. That was great. You have such a sweet voice, and thanks for sharing that with us and for coming on the podcast today. You have a wonderful day, and I will see you later. So what we've shown you today, we have shown you literally how to feel your feelings, how to process a feeling, and in doing so, how to feel better. Because so often what we do is the opposite of feeling our feelings. We repress them or run away from them. So I hope today's episode really helps you. I'd like for you to practice this week, actually not being afraid of feeling those vibrations in your body and feeling those feelings and processing them. And I'm going to take another crack at doing the isms lecture for you guys for next week. So I'm looking forward to that. So I will see you next week in episode 27. That's all I got today. My virtuosos, go be a light to the world and feel all those feelings, the good ones, the bad ones, and make the world a better place for yourself and others. Love always, Sue.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Becoming Virtuosa. If you want to find out more, come check out virtuosacoaching.com. That's virtuosa with an A, coaching.com. See you next week.